Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be recommending you 7 classics if you like Grimdark. Now, I read a lot of Grimdark, fantasy, but I also read a lot of classics, and I also tend to read classics that have maybe a slightly darker undertone. So I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to recommend classics to you folks who read darker fantasy and grimdark fantasy. Without further ado, let's jump into, and also the cue cards are back. I know some of you guys like that. I do, they're fun, but I generally forget to use them, but I brought them with me to Scotland, so I thought, let's just do it. All right, first we have The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy, a book that I still think about. It is about mortality, it is about death, it is about coming to terms with your own limitations when you're unwell. It is about facing the decisions that you have made and the realities of your life when you are not at your optimum. It is going to make you feel depressed. It is going to make you think about your own mortality. So if you're not ready to do that, I would not recommend reading this book. It is a book that if you have ever been ill, if you have ever been immobile in your life, you will feel heard. I felt heard when I read this book. I feel like it was the only thing that I read or listened to when I was really sick that made me feel like I was okay. And it's really bizarre to think that a book about mortality and death would make you feel okay. But trust me, it does. It humanizes your experience. It makes you feel like that what you're thinking is not abnormal and it's okay to think those things. And that is why you should read this book, because it is wonderful and that was terrible. Next on my list is Stoner by John Williams, one of the best books I've read this year. A book that I still think about. To be honest, all the books on this list I still think about in some capacity, but Stoner in particular, because it is about an unremarkable man living an unremarkable life, and we are charting his journey as a young man up until the point to when he's a lot older and he's a lot more kind of established in his life. We get insight into who this person is and how he has ended up to where he is. He is a person who has made the decision to do pretty much the bare minimum to be comfortable. But I think the question is, you know, what is the point of life? Like, what is the meaning of one's life? Should we do the bare minimum, or should we go over and beyond to try and get the life that we want? I don't know. I don't have the answers to these questions, but I think this story brings those questions up and it will make you think about them. It's wonderful. The character of Stoner is probably one of the most memorable characters that is in my head, and I just loved it. And I strongly recommend it for fans of Grimdark. The next book on my list is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. My first Donna Tartt book that I've read. It's the only one that I've read to date at the time of the recording of this video. But it is a dark academia book, which is not really something that I'm particularly a fan of. Like, I know there's like a whole fan base around dark academia, but I'm not like, I don't really care, to be honest, if it's in a school setting. I actually prefer things more in the kind of like real world, if that makes sense. But this is set in a boarding school, and we are following one main character as he essentially uncovers some very bizarre things about this group of enlightened students. It is just very dark and very creepy, and there's just a lot of like things happening, and you don't have explanations as to why they're happening, but they're happening and it just doesn't feel right. A lot of this book just fell off for me, but not the writing or the book itself. It's more like what the characters are doing and their actions and what they're saying. It just doesn't feel right. Like there's something going on, but we don't know what it is. And it's just weird, and it's just fantastic. It's so good. Like, I really liked it. And somebody really needs to buy the rights to this and make it into a movie, because I think it would make an amazing movie. And I'd be happy to direct it if somebody wants to give me the job. The next on my list, this is the third one, is The Bonfire of the Vanities by Tom Wolfe. I read this book 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it is a book predominantly about classism and race in 1950s, I think, 1950s New York. It's a chunky book, but it is a really brutal look of the impact of the imbalance and inequity of race and class in New York. We are following one main character as he essentially is accused of killing a black man, and it is about the consequences of those actions. It is just phenomenally written. It's one of the few like classics that I feel like doesn't really get talked about a lot, but it's a book that I think we should study in schools, to be honest, because I think it gives you a really unfiltered, unapologetic look of the treatment of Black people at that time in history, also of just poor people, the people who are of a lower class. And I just think it's done really well. The writing is really beautiful, even though it's covering a really difficult theme, or themes I should say, because there's other themes too, but the main one is really about justice and about different kinds of people and their place in society. It's very dark, like there's not a lot of humor in the book, and I was like pretty depressed as I was reading this book, because a lot of what this book talks about is very relevant to today's society, especially if you see what's going on in America at the moment with the treatment of Black people and minorities in general. It's very uncomfortable. It'll make you feel uncomfortable, and I think if you're an American in particular, I think you should pick it up, because I think it might make you question certain things about your government and your country. But I think anybody should read it. The UK is by no means an angel when it comes to race and class. It's probably just better at hiding it, to be honest. Anyway, we're starting to veer into politics, which I tend to not like to do. Let's move on. Next one. This is not going to be a surprise to anybody, and you're probably going to be thinking, why is she recommending this? And I'm recommending it because there's actually quite a lot of dark work done in this book, and it covers some really interesting themes from a grimdark lens, and that is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. And also, the other one I would recommend by Dumas is The Count of Monte Cristo, which is a revenge tale, ultimately. It's a story about friendship, family, found family, about revenge and justice, about religion and monarchy and political systems. Like, it's just, there's so much packed into that story. There are some like pretty heavy themes covered in this book, you know, also about class, about gender, roles in society. There's a lot of things about like justice and doing what is right. So I think it's one of those books that like, it can be quite lighthearted in areas, but in general, I think it's actually quite a dark book when you really think about what's happening under each layer. And there are a lot of layers in this book. That's why I love it so much. All right, we're down to the final two. The next one is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I don't know if you can really call these next two classics, but I'm just going to call them classics because I think they're timeless. And if they're timeless, then they surely should be a classic, right? So this one is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Very dark, very unforgiving, very depressing, literally trigger warnings for everything. It's not an easy book. It's set in a dystopian world where we don't really know what's happened to get to that point in time, but it's set in a world where it's incredibly desolate. There is very little hope, even though there are little moments of hope. These people are living their lives on the edge every single day, not knowing whether they're going to survive. And it's really about this story between this man and his son, and how they get through each day and how they survive each day. It's very tough, I think, on the psyche to really like think about this book beyond the kind of surface level, because I don't know, it's tough, man. Like there's certain things that I still don't really fully think about when I think about this book, because it will take you into a dark place that I don't think the average person would want to be taken to. So bear that in mind. I think you have to be in a very specific frame of mind to read that book, but it is phenomenal, and it cemented Cormac McCarthy as a favourite author of mine for sure. And then the last book that I'm going to recommend, I will be having a review of this coming out if it's not out already, and that is Deadwood by Pete Dexter. One of the kind of most quintessential classic westerns, and it is really just a character study of some of the kind of main celebrities of the time. You know, we have Charlie Utter, Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, Al Swearingen. We have this kind of A-list cast of real people, but through the lens of kind of Dexter's wonderful writing style. It's just a beautiful character study, and it's a really great look at society at the time. There's a lot of kind of misogyny, racism, homophobia. We have some interaction with the treatment of kind of slaves and Black people. We have treatment of the Comanches, which was an Indian tribe at the time. And then we also get some interaction with the Chinese as well, and then there's obviously the role of women. It just kind of, it tackles a lot of different things at the same time, but like in a really surface level way. But I don't mean that in a negative way though. I mean it as though we kind of just get this like overarching view of what was happening in society at the time, and it's just done really well. And there we have it. That's my last recommendation. I might do a part 2 of this because I have more suggestions, but I kind of wanted to break it down. So if you want more, let me know and I will do a second video. Any of these books, if you like Grimdark, I think you'll get on very well with. There's kind of so much to unpack in each book, and I think for quite a few of these I do have reviews out, so definitely check out if you want to know more. If you want to know more in the comments as well, like I'm happy to answer any questions. As always, thanks for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one, and let me know if you want to see more. I'm happy to do more suggestions, but otherwise I will see you in the next one. Stay safe, take care, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.